Welcome to Paranormal M, where the unexplained comes to life through chilling stories. Subscribe now and hit the bell to ensure you never miss an episode. Prepare for a journey into the extraordinary. The Castle Basement. I used to work in what is now considered a golf course in New York. It has a restaurant type of a setting. It's in what used to be a residence back in the mid to late 1800s, and it was created here in 1852. The building is said to contain the stones from Whitby Abbey, a 13th century New Yorkshire, England ruin. It was private until 1921. That's when it became part of the country club. Now, this was a seasonal job in a professional kitchen as a salad/dessert girl. I worked in the food industry for 11 years, but it was never this high-end. The exterior is a gorgeous sight to behold, if you're into structure and especially history. The moment I laid my eyes on it, I had taken my phone out and looked up the history. I had Kitty doing this. I even did this to my first apartment. I like to learn new things. So, Erie 1. So this place looked like a mini castle. Mind you, it was a personal residence at one point and had 3 floors. Offices were on top, occasions and events were held on the second, and then there was the basement. That's where maintenance workers changed, needed condiments, and spare dishes. The basement, it just gave off an eerie feeling. Not at first. I really wasn't paying attention to it at first. But as I got comfortable, the more I relaxed, the more I felt it. After about a month in, that's when it started. Walk into the basement through the hidden stairs that are tucked to the side, hidden from view of the customers. The moment you touched that cold stone floor, you could feel eyes just watching you. And it was always coming from the opening of the side room where the boiler was. It never passed that walkway. You couldn't see it, but you could feel it watching you come and go. Like a child on timeout in a corner and waiting for their parents to tell them they can move again. I had to go to the basement to get my chef's smock in order to work. This was about 6 years ago. So, I was old enough to know that there was somebody there, but also to know that ghosts were taboo or unbelieved by the majority of civilization. So I kept this to myself like a sad but dirty secret. One day I'm in the bathroom, and a fellow chef came in. She was changing, and I heard her excusing herself if I were to see anything that I shouldn't. But she was unable to change downstairs because she felt somebody was watching her from that room. That specific boiler room. My head jerked a bit back hearing her, and once I stepped out of the stall when I was done, I turned to stare at her to make sure she was being serious. She was. She said the exact same thing I felt. Someone was in that boiler room, silently watching us. I admitted I too had forgotten that feeling when I get to the basement, but I thought it was just me. It only confirmed, well, that it wasn't, and that I wasn't losing my mind either. As I'm washing my hands while she changed, I kept my head low to prevent any accidental glimpse. Though I explained to her it kind of makes sense if you know the history of the place. She only told me what she knew, which everybody knew. The bricks were from an actual castle. With that, I confirmed court research that yes, they were from a castle from England. The castle was found in ruin, so the creator decided, why let the bricks go to waste? I guess. I wanted to say something, but my tongue was fighting my teeth to come out and say it, so I did. I explained that because of what might have happened within the walls of the castle when it was in its peak, one could only imagine what hell had been placed during those horrid times. Kingdom reigns, tortures of prisoners, etc. Whatever part of the castle they took, they might have brought a friend with them in the process. Or Only God knows what was buried here before they built the whole residence, but if that was the case, wouldn't it have been like free to roam instead of being confined to one room? All I know is we always tried our best to avoid the basement if necessary. The Castle 2, The Old Woman. Built in 1852, the building is said to contain stones from Whitby Abbey, 13th century North Yorkshire, England ruin. Now, in the first story, I wrote my constant experience with the basement, but this one I'm about to share is about a room. Now, there is an area above the basement that's allowed for customers. That's the bathroom. Now, when you get to that first level, there's like 3 doors to that floor. Men's to the left, women's straight ahead, and to the right is where they sort of made this changing room for the main guests for events. Now, I don't pay much attention to any room specifically except where it needs to be, which is 1, the bathroom, 2, the main kitchen, 3, the prep kitchen, and 4, the basement. I didn't get any eerie feeling from any of the other rooms as I did in that basement, so it wasn't like the attention was needed for anywhere else. One day I walked downstairs to the bathroom. I walked past the changing room and something caught my eye and a feeling came upon me. The room door was open, and when you walked past the door, you could see what looked like 2 or 3 cedar sofa next to a small bed table for the lamp. A bit deeper in was sort of a makeup table with a mirror and a chair in front of it. I always see myself in that mirror when I walk by it, when the door's left open. But that day, the glimpse of an old woman sitting in the chair staring at herself in the mirror, her hands resting on the surface. I caught the white of her hair as it was up in a bun. She wore a dress that seemed a bit old, but it was long. The face I couldn't see, was almost faceless, and her head was slightly hung, but she was in the room with the light off. Mind you, this was a quick 5-second catch of the eye. A 5-second catch that made me stop at the bathroom door, hand on the doorknob asking myself, what the fuck did I just see? No customers were allowed in until a certain time. No worker fit that description I called of her. I stared at the door and slowly let go of the bathroom knob so I could walk toward it. Because, of course, you walk towards things that you know shouldn't be there. I would probably be the first idiot to die in a horror movie. I stand in front of the room door. The only other way out is the mirror, which is completely free. No one was in front of it but me. The chair was free and sitting under the respective table. No old woman. I read a bit more into the castle's residences after that. Her appearance seemed to be up to date and be from the castle's origins in England. So it had to be the residence of the castle after it was built. Turns out that the room was the owner's mother or mother-in-law's bedroom. It was her favorite room. Midnight movement. So this was literally last night. I was on the phone with a friend. I usually have my switch on the TV watching YouTube videos. Wink, wink. Now, having it been idling for a while, the switch turned off. A few minutes after the TV followed as well. Now, as I'm talking on the phone, I heard something and I look up to my TV and my TV was literally shaking. Like someone was wiggling it. Not turning, but shaking. I'm staring at it and it just continued as if somebody was trying to get it to work. I'm staring. Are you serious? Now I'm completely quiet and my friend on the phone was asking if I was okay. I said, yeah, but dude, my TV's shaking on its own. At that moment, The TV came to a sudden stop, as if whoever was shaking it heard me, and literally out of the corner of my eye, as if I was staring at the TV, a partial white figure had walked out my bedroom. Me, being dumb, yelled out, "Oh, come on, you broke the first rule." I know there's something here in my apartment, and I have animals they play with. I've caught them on video playing with orbs, many orbs. When my animal stares behind me, all I say is, "As long as you don't show yourself to me, we're fine." So my roommate of 7 years broke a rule. Boo. Boo-hoo. Rather hilarious. So I'm going to talk about this thing during my mid-years living in this apartment because I find it hilarious. You see, I am quite a quiet introvert. I wake up, play games, watch movies, go to work, come home, do it again. My home has tranquility and solitude. So all is calm like the lakes when only the wind moves the water. Now during this time, I was trying to help a friend get away from her horrible living situation with family. I've known her for a few years since college, so it wasn't a spew of the moment decision. Spur, I hope. I was just sick of hearing the bullshit she was putting under because they felt since they're family, they have a right to use and abuse her. I know what it's like. But her issues were a step up from what I went through. So after my fiancé at the time had left to go back to his home to help with his family, she came a few months later. And might I add, before I finally got her in though, I helped her get a job in the same place I worked at, so she can have her own money. Before she got the job, I told her if she stood with me, she can stay rent-free till she gets a job. The month after that, we start. We can just talk about payments. So, got her the job, and for the first month, she stood rent-free. She bought whatever she wanted, and I made no objections. At this time, I had tons of cats, so we shared a room while I had the other room with the cats locked in. She had nothing to sleep on but my bed, so we figured, why not? I slept on the sofa. Red flags here. Now she'd like to be entertained and wanted me to constantly entertain her and chat with her. She has her own little TV with her PS4, and I have my big TV where my Xbox is set up on. She liked a lot of chick flick movies while I enjoyed horror. So when she felt something was great to her, she would force me to watch it. You can always say no. I'd let her watch it on my big TV, but I wouldn't pay much attention to it, and that would just annoy her. Now here comes the fun part. Within the first month, she had, a lot of things to literally get me angry. Because she found how I acted hilarious, but she would always say, "As long as you don't throw me out, you can do whatever you want to me." Over time, I was growing more annoyed and rather angry toward her. I was reminding myself, I'm helping her. Didn't want her to go back to, what I was helping her stay away from. But the fact I was being disrespected just to intentionally get a rise out of me was going too far. When I get upset, my accent changes, and she finds this hilarious. I was born speaking English in a Spanish family, but I enjoy mimicking accents. But when I get upset, my accent rises from English to some New York Italian accent. She stops when she starts hearing the Spanish accent because that means she has hit the red zone, and she'll tend to back off. The rising anger out of me started causing the flow in my apartment to feel different, almost like pressure, like the moment you walked in. At the end of the first month, all I asked was for $20 to $40 a week starting her second month with me. She agreed till I realized she lied after 2 weeks and still has no money. Or at least said they had no money. Talked about how she had no money after the phone and the weed and buying food. This is like a slalom tracker. Whatever that sport is where you're skiing down with these red flags everywhere. Being fed up, I was cooking something and she took out an 18-count carton of eggs. She was about to put it on the counter, not fully on it, but halfway, and I stared and I said in my head, I hope that shit gets smacked out of your hand. At that moment, the egg smashed to the floor. And from the way it literally looked like somebody smacked it out of her hand. I stared at this, and she jumped back and went to save the one that didn't break. I didn't tell her anything, as I just felt that it was her clumsiness. Over time, since that day, things even at work were being thrown out of her hand or smacked out of her hand, like spanking a child's hand, telling her no to make her stop. She even told me that she was in the shower. She felt some touching her, and all of a sudden I heard her squeal. She came out quickly. I asked her what's wrong, and she said that she felt something, like just push her into the tub. I sat there like, oh crap, what have I done? A lot of weird things have been happening around her, and again since that day. At the end of the second month, I kind of threw her things out. She became too much and was too disrespectful, even at work. I became rather vulgar to her after a while before I threw her out. The day or two after I did, so I approached her at work and apologized for throwing her out, but she left me no choice. For the few months after, she went back to her mom's house when I threw her out. She told me that these weird things are still happening. I told her about my roommates after we were at work, and she held some tongs for tossing a salad. They were literally slapped out of her hand and slid across the floor. That day, I told her that my home has others, and it's from you pissing me off. You ruin their flow and probably just making you pay for disrespecting me in my own home, in their home after all. And I did it for you. After a while, she no longer had those problems, but things were going downhill for her. It's because a friend was doing to her what she did to me. Although they didn't live with her, she was going above and beyond for them only to be mistreated. After she came running to me many times about this, I got fed up. And when she said I'm sick of apologizing to people when I didn't do anything, so I told her she needs to get over it because this is your karma for what you did to me. Not once did you ever apologize after all I did for you. And I did a lot more than any of your friends or family ever did. You've done all this, and don't come to me crying. My home is sort of back to being like a solitude. The energy's back to being tranquil, but I have to kind of give up a lot after my emotional trauma. First encounters of my first apartment. Now, I've lived in my current, which is my first apartment, for 7 years. I was in my late 20s when I left my mom's apartment that had their own spooks. Not gonna lie, I was scared. Not of the neighborhood or the people, but not knowing what I was going to deal with alone. Every time I was left alone in my mother's house, I was always messed with by who or whatever else was in there. Since I was 6, this has been happening to me. But this time, I didn't have anyone to run to. I had my cats, and I felt that they would protect me. I was paranoid at first, but after a while, I was okay. Now, as I got comfortable, I figured, okay, quiet, silent. Nothing is in this house to that stature to worry about. I have a 2-bedroom, and one room was, originally supposed to be an office and video game room. And then there's the other bedroom. I locked my cats out of the bedroom so I can sleep on multiple occasions, and I always make sure I close the door. One day I woke up and I saw my door slowly open. I inhaled so hard and jumped up to see my cat waltzing in. This happened on several occasions, even when my fiancé, at the time, was here, and, well, he tries to say he didn't close the door right, but one day I saw his messenger open and he wrote to a friend telling them, "I closed the door and there was no way in hell that door was even able to open on its own." I sat there at nights just staring at the door. Now, I freaked out more because after we made the office into a cat's room and moved everything into one room, office stuff in the bedroom, we would close the cat's room and my bedroom. But yet we wake up every other day with both doors opened and the cat's with us and walking on us, climbing on us. One time I'm on my sofa in the bedroom because I had to throw out my bed, and I saw my closet door, which has a mirrored sliding door, just shaking. It was like something was in the closet moving around. But the cats were nowhere in my bedroom. They were locked in their room. The mirror looked like a portal effect as the pressure of the movement was coming from the middle of the door. But the door is open and no one's there. I just stared at it. But by this time I wasn't as petrified of it, but that's when I had accepted I had others. And I video recorded a few times to catch the cats playing with moving orbs. Not dust, trust me. I know the difference. They looked like little balls of light flickering like a flashlight. So, I made a rule. As long as you don't show yourself, we're fine. Work ghost. I've been working at an industry for 11 years. 8 years at one location and 3 years at another. Now, I'm not sure, since I go through a lot, whether it's really the same one or something else, or I just happen to be in places where the unseen are. But then again, only Lord knows what's put this ground before man put above. Now, this experience hasn't happened a lot since it's at work, and I'm not as attentive since it's a fast-paced environment. Dealing with food orders and incomplete workers, or incompetent workers, will do that to you. But there are times when I've been alone when it's slow. Others are on break or called out and told not to come in. I'm on the line cleaning up, fixing a small order. And out of my peripheral vision, somebody walked over toward my direction to walk past me. They never seen me walking away. Mind you, I'm on the line where the food is, and it's a straight path to the doorway, and there's no turns. I even witnessed this once or twice at the register. And again, there's no turns behind me or anything where this person can jump over and hide. It's always an old man in a white shirt. I don't get to see anything else because by the time I get to give any visual attention, he's already about to pass me. He comes out of nowhere like he took a sudden turn or something. What creeps me out more was when, like, they walked past me. You can feel the gust of sudden wind, somebody having walked past you, sort of at a fast pace if they were in a rush. So I'm looking forward and he rushes behind me and I see him approaching me from the right, but I never ever see him. It's like he disappears right behind me. I don't usually ask anybody if they saw anything or if they walked by unless I knew for sure. Try not to look as crazy as I normally already look. I feel straitjackets don't suit me. Other than that, nothing out of the ordinary. And besides that, really happened in this location at all, well, to me. So as much as I have the elderly man sneaking up behind me, in the second location, though, this location had stuff happening. Not as often, but still happens. I worked in this location for 3 years, since the other one closed for good. So anyways, I have opened and closed this store, and I've had this other store many times, sometimes the same day. But the closing, sometimes they didn't go off as easy as when you're the last one out and waiting for the manager to drive you home, or waiting inside till the next bus arrives because it's freezing cold or suffocatingly hot. But I'm a trainer, so I know how to close the majority of the store, mainly barista, line, and register. It's really the main ones I close, and again, sometimes in the same day. Again, ugh. Now in this location it's a bit different. I still have that person walking by me, that same experience really, and keep this to myself. It's not the same man though, it's a definite to this. At night, when I alone, literally the only left human are 2 or 3, and they are downstairs. You can see where the stairs are at and if anybody's there and fucking with you. No one's upstairs with me. The soda machine sometimes goes on by itself, and I don't mean the humming noise of the machine. No, I mean you can hear someone pressing against the chosen soda, and the noise it makes when it dispenses the sugary liquid. At first, I'm just think it's the machine. And due to being pressed a million times a day, I'm pretty sure a button or 2 will wear out and malfunction here and there. Wishful thinking, I know. Now, this has happened a few times, not consecutively, so I just brush it off. Soda doesn't go all over the place, it's just those taps that allow the soda to go for like a split 2 or 3 seconds. But the part that confirmed my mind was right was when you hear a chair being moved. Now, I'm the only one on the floor. There's the last 1 or 2 downstairs and only 1 staircase that you can't go past without being seen. No one is on the floor in the dining room at all. But you hear a chair adjust like a movement. It comes from random spots in the dining room. You don't see them move since there's dozens of chairs, but you do hear them. One day, I swear I saw someone rush like a dark blur go to the bathroom. Thought it was the manager or the worker that was left, but nobody comes upstairs. I figured maybe I wasn't paying attention and they came up. It could happen since I'm not the brightest person there is. Suddenly, I see my manager coming from the staircase, whether by himself or with the second to last worker downstairs. Besides the old man, there's a shadow person that's in the location. It moves fast, so I'm not sure if that's why I can't see him or if he's just perhaps featureless. Now, I thought it was just me, until one of the new employees had been there for a few weeks and he was closing by himself. After a while, he sat me down as we waited for the ride in the bus. He looked to me and was like, "So how you handling the job so far?" "Blue, I need to ask you something." "Sups. Anything all good?" "Yeah, just the noises sometimes get to me." Me thinking, but keeping to myself about these things, not wanting to send wrong messages. "Oh, those are just the machines, especially the ice machine. Sounds get tricky when you're alone." "It's not the machines, it's the chairs." Now I'm just watching him as he realized my hesitation to say something and look around. I feel him staring at me as if it confirmed it wasn't just the machines, and then he said it. "There's an old man that walks around here. Who is he?" "No one to concern yourself with. You leave them alone, they leave you alone." "There's also something else here, but I see the old man here more." Me, just try not to pay attention to it. It'll only make you paranoid at night, and although it might make you work faster into closing the store, don't recommend giving it much thought. We both suddenly hear a chair move as the legs went across the floor for a split second, like we felt it was them saying that we're listening. I'm used to it, but I still jump, and from time to time too. We soon get up, stand by the door to the store, waiting for our time before we have to leave. He left after a few months for a better job, and I stood there till my injury stopped me from working. But as I said, it was continuous in there, but it still happened on a here and there basis. But I always heard the chairs and the old man. Never looked into the history of the area, nor did I want to. Do enough Nancy Drewing around anyways. That is a good use, or it's a good verb form of Nancy Drew. You know what I mean. Halloween night. Okay, so this happened a few years ago in my mother's apartment. Again, alone in the house. And again, I'm not sure where anybody was or went to, and I'm just lying in bed. It was dark outside, so I wasn't sure what time of the night it was. I would say maybe 8 or 11. I was asleep, dreaming of whatever it was I was dreaming. More than likely a weird dream, as all the other dreams were. For some reason, part of me decided to wake up, and as I opened my eyes, something didn't feel right. Now, I know about sleep paralysis, and I've been through this many times. Can't move, can't talk, not sure whether you're still asleep or awake. But this was completely different. The atmosphere didn't feel right. Felt heavy. I heard something, but I wasn't sure what it was since I was just waking up, so figured either my mother came home or I dropped something. As I was trying to move to sit up, I felt a sudden grip, a tight grip like a predator catching its prey. Now I'm thinking it's paralysis, but then I felt a heavy frame over me, like a body pressing against me, trying to hold me down. Suddenly there was a pain in my stomach, like something was putting their knee in my stomach to keep me pinned. More pressure was put into my stomach as I was trying to move, toss to the side and curl up, and the pain was in one spot. Not all over, just a spot a knee would be. Suddenly I'm hearing some breathing. I don't feel the air, but I can hear it, and then I felt a hand on my face, like somebody grabbed my jaw and slowly made my head turn to its side. I'm laying there, moving my arms slowly, but unable to really function it, you know. And then it happened. Whispers were heard into my ear, talking, but at a fast pace. I couldn't catch up to it. But I heard certain words being said. And this time I felt actual breath in my ear. My body still felt heavy from whatever was on me, and my mobility was completely shot. All I could do was breathe and feel, and the pain was getting more intense. Within the whispers, all I heard were demands. It was like listening to a spirit box. You could only hear certain words coming out, all the noise that you were hearing. I don't remember all of the words, but they were pills, take, and bathroom. There was also a few other words that were kind of close to that category. Not sure how long it went for, since I was trying to figure out what, who, or why. Kept squirming on my bed as the whispering continued. Finally, I felt the heaviness disappear off of me. I flung up to sit up on it like a heavy pant and held my stomach where I felt the pressure. Immediately rolled off the bed and looked at it, wondering what the hell just happened. The atmosphere was back to normal. And there was no one else in the room, but something said look, and when I looked, my closet door was slightly opened. It's as if you had read my previous entries that you would read, if not closed. Things happen. Birthday balloon. Mid to late 90s. My mother bought me a helium balloon that had Belle from Beauty and the Beast on both sides. It was rather big, about the size of a medium sofa cushion, and it was a pretty balloon, and I loved it a lot. Over time, I was enjoying it here and there, till it was just still floating about the house. That's cool, balloons do that, and slowly they sort of fade away from the air. Fine, cool. But I realized something. It would be in every room I was on its own. Didn't think much of it at first, so I'm just ignoring it, but after a while I could catch it floating in my direction little by little. It was literally following me where I went. It wasn't like a fast or quick pace, but it's at its own pace, and it would follow me. I was in the living room, and it was just chilling in the corner, still in the air floating. Both of us just sitting there. Without thinking, I got up off the sofa and went toward my bedroom to look for something or just go to my room. Within a few minutes, I look up and see the balloon floating at my door as if waiting for me to invite it in. I watched like, what the fuck? And again, not thinking, maybe the air and all, and this went on for days. It took very long for it to lose its air. Whenever I moved, it wasn't too far behind. I'd be in the shower, and when I'd leave, the balloon's at the door like a dog waiting. The balloon was found in rooms that had no explanation on how it got in there. It was like touching the ceiling and had in no way possible to be able to pass the door frames without any help. One day, it was in my bedroom, fine, whatever. No, not fine. I was in the living room just chilling, and suddenly I see it floating toward the living room in the hallway. It stops at the entrance of the living room, floats toward a corner, and just sits there. I'm alone, so how did it get out of my room to begin with? And after that, I started being petrified of the balloon. Didn't go near it, and I avoided it like you would anyone in the streets. My mom wanted to release the air so the whole thing could be over, but I didn't let her. I'm not sure why, honestly, but that balloon made me uncomfortable. Even when the air was half gone from it, it still floated around the house like a stepdad. That's when it made it easier to get into rooms, and I'd have to close my damn door to prevent it from entering. The worst days were when I go to sleep and wake up in the morning with the balloon hovering over me or by my bed. Finally, damn thing died off, and I think my mom folded it up and either threw it away or put it away for a keepsake. No more birthday balloons. And if I do get them, I undo them at the end of the day. When I was 8, I had my first paranormal experience. First encounter was with my stepfather at that time. My mother and my brother were just living in a rented house of a suicide victim. Of course, they didn't told my mom or my stepfather about it when they first rented, but the neighbors did told us after a month of living there. So at first, everything's fine, only an odd feeling about the garage. The dead forest behind the house. And when I say dead forest, I mean like a straight line of dead trees that just keeps going for miles. But when you look to the left and to the right of the house, the rest of the forest was green and luscious. Anyways, my mom was working at night, so we would be with her boyfriend from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. During the daylight, we kept seeing black shadows going by the corner of our eyes. But you'd look, and nothing was there until me and my brother saw it on the floor going up to the attic. But it wasn't really an attic, more like an empty space in between the roof and the house. One night everything was shaking, like as if there was a huge storm outside the windows, and the door was shaking, and then the TV went static, and my brother went catatonic. I was faced with my stepfather looking at me with the creepiest smile I've ever seen. He said to me that the banging I was hearing was monsters trying to get in, and that we'd get eaten alive. He was just going to say weird stuff to scare me with the blackest of eyes. It's like his pupil was so huge and he was another person, like telling the story about those monsters outside. And I'm going to sound crazy, but at one point I saw a wolf-like figure with the red eyes at the door of the patio transforming into a man, like a black figure with yellowish eyes. I was so scared I can't believe I didn't pass out or something. Like I kept looking back at my brother and calling his name, but he had no response, only dead staring at the static of the TV looking like a total zombie. Meanwhile, the doors and windows were still shaking and banging. There's no storms outside, no wind, no nothing. The trees weren't even moving outside the windows. Then after what felt like a real-life nightmare that I couldn't wake from, I remember I looked back at my stepfather and saw 3 white female figures. They were all standing behind him, looking at me with a smile that I can't explain. But I felt like they were saying to me that you're safe and you're not alone. I felt this courage overcome the fear, then grabbed the arm of my stepfather. I yelled at him to stop it now, looking straight back into those black eyes, seeing the pupil shrinking back to normal in a matter of seconds, like whatever was happening in him was gone, poofed. And suddenly I was face to face with the scared and panicked grown man that kept asking me what had happened. Seeing that I was in tears and my brother was white looking dead in the couch, TV went back to normal, no more banging, everything had stopped suddenly. I asked him if we could leave the house for the night until my mom comes back. He then took the keys of the car and we stayed in the car for a couple of streets away from the house and waited for my mom to come back in the early morning. I was confused and I was mad at him. Didn't want to speak to him. I told him everything to my mom, and next day the following week we were moving from that house and leaving him behind. Apparently, my mom told me after he had summoned a demon with one of his friends a couple of months prior. Wow. And apparently he was having suicidal thoughts and losing parts of his days that he couldn't remember. He felt like he was going crazy, and with reasons he was getting pretty scared. They even went to a priest. And anyway, that's the end of the story of my first encounter with the paranormal. I have a few others that happened to me. I got scared and prayed to never see or hear anything ever again. To be as oblivious as possible to the paranormal. Never saw or heard or feel anything in years. The Man in Black. When I was 10 years old, I'm sleeping over at my friend's apartment in the same apartment complex as me. It was a late summer night when I suddenly woke up not feeling quite good for some reason. So I went to the window to breathe in some air, and just thinking it was probably a nightmare that I couldn't remember, which is, kind of weird to me, but I usually always do. But anyways, my friends are dead asleep in the same room as me, and I'm at the window. First, I look around at the top of the trees in the sky. My eyes go down toward the street in front of me. Then I see a man all dressed in black with a black ski mask that only shows his eyes, staring right up at our window, staring at me. He's not moving a finger, just staring there looking at me. I wake up my friends, telling them to look down the street, which they immediately did, but now I had my friends looking back at me like I was crazy, saying to me that they couldn't see anything, there's no one. And mind you, at this point I'm just crying and hysterically telling them that he's right there in front of them, but they couldn't see him. They eventually went and woke up the 17-year-old, so hopefully that way she could come and try to calm me down, and after a while went back to sleep. And that was the end of it. Never saw anything else like that. And by the way, I'm not schizophrenic at all, and I had a shrink when I was 14, and that was for social anxiety. That's because of the moving so much. So to this day, I'm quite confused about that night when I saw. I'm curious to know really if anybody's experienced something like that. Scratching and knocking at my door at 3 a.m. Just to preface, about 3 years ago is when I had this paranormal experience. It happened in July of 2016. I'm a night owl, and I've always had a hard time going to bed at a reasonable hour since childhood, especially during this period of my life. I was near the end of a very bad time in my life where I was hospitalized for a year due to mental health issues. Because I had no job at the time, I often stayed up as late as I liked and worked on projects, sometimes even till dawn. I liked the comfort, and all the night pretty much brought me all of this and brought me the quietness of it all. Really enjoyed being the only one awake and never once considered that it could be scary. I was used to it. At this time, I wasn't sure about the paranormal, even though I had some experiences in the past. It's something I never really thought much about, and I wouldn't say I didn't believe in it entirely, but I was very skeptical. So I still lived with my parents. My mom often got up during the night to check on me, even though it always annoyed me a bit. I understood that she was just worried about me, because of my mental illness issues. She would tell me that it's late and I need to sleep. She slowly stopped doing it after a while because she realized there's no point, and I went to bed when I wanted to. I was also doing a lot better at this point mentally and was much more stable. And I was starting a new job next week. So back to that night. It was around 3:30 a.m. and I was awake in my room drawing and watching Netflix. I had my door shut and I was just about to turn the lights off to go to sleep. I figured I should at least try to lay down and sleep even though I really wasn't tired. As I was putting my colored pencils away and turning off Netflix, I heard something knock on my door really loudly. It did this 3 times and sounded like something was scratching the door along with it. Expecting it to be my mom asking me why I was still up, I replied, "Yeah?" But no one answered. And then I heard 3 loud knocks and scratching noises again. Scratching sounded like someone's nails running down from the top of the door, and I said, "Yeah, what is it? What do you want?" No one answered again. So I started thinking that whoever was knocking on my door was trying to scare me. It didn't make any sense. Why my family would be trying to scare me? They had all been passed out for hours and not the type to do something like that at 3 in the morning. Then it happened again, and this time I was like, "Hello, hello." Silence again. I even for a split second thought that maybe it was my dog, just trying to get into my room. But just as quickly debunking that idea. My dog couldn't get upstairs where the bedrooms are because we had it locked. There's a heavy-duty gate that blocked the top of the stairs. He's a little dog too and can't get over it. The knocking and scratching was so deliberate and with such force that there was no way it was my dog. It rattled my door as it happened. It was always done in the same pattern as the knock before, just like a person would do. Then it happened one last time. I didn't say anything this time, and I suddenly realized how bizarre this was. I had this, intense feeling of fear washing over me. I was too scared to open my door to check and see if everything was there, and I felt like if I did, something would harm me. My instinct told me that I'd be inviting whatever this thing was into my room if I did. I sat on my bed for maybe 15 minutes staring at the door in pure shock. Finally had the courage to get up and turn off the lights. And I kept my lamp on that still lit up the whole room. There's no way I was sleeping in the dark. I texted my boyfriend 30 minutes after the incident, telling him what just happened. He works early in the morning, so he responded right away, telling me not to investigate any further and to try to sleep. I barely slept any. After what was just happening, I was like the first person up in the morning. I told everyone what happened and no one took me seriously. They said I must have imagined it because I was really tired or something, but I didn't. I was wide awake and lucid. I asked everybody if they knocked on my door and none of them did. I thought for sure somebody at least heard it too, because seemingly something demonic or scratching, the sound was loud as hell. Pun intended. They said no, and I knew that they were not lying, and my dog was still downstairs where we left him the night before, and this freaked me out a lot. And stopped thinking about it because I couldn't explain it. I tried thinking of a rational explanation, but came up with nothing. After this is when I started to become very interested in the paranormal, did lots of research, and was looking for answers. A month later, I got together my own paranormal investigation team, began doing my own investigations. Since then, I've had many encounters with the supernatural, and captured evidence of weird happenings, visual and audio. Everybody with me also would experience these things. But those are stories for another day. Even after 3 years, this is something that I think about sometimes. I wonder if it was demonic or just a spirit with a message. I asked a friend whose psychic abilities I've seen amazing evidence of recently. She said it was a visitor. I know this kind of phenomenon has happened to many, especially at the witching hour, being 3 a.m. I know many say that 3 knocks on the hour means mocking the Trinity, which means it's a demon, but I'm not sure. Even though the creepy as fuck nail scratching is pretty convincing. But there is much more symbolism to the number 3 than just that. I gotta stop knocking in 3s, apparently. Damn. Oops. Shape-shifting spirit in the forest. Friend is attacked. So there's an infamous apparition that appears at the head of the trail. It usually happens around sunset. Many have reported seeing a man wearing 70s clothing at the top of the cliff staring down at you. Then he runs at an impossible angle down the cliff with a smile on his face. And just as he's about to hit the trail, he vanishes into thin air. It's been seen for decades. Many police calls have been made because of it. Law enforcement is aware of this phenomenon and are told to ignore it. Many people believed it was a real person. There's also a mine that collapsed up there, killing many. Lots of rock climbers have fallen to their death. There's been black magic rituals there. Many hikers and people have gone missing. And also, Ted Bundy killed someone up there as well. The battle at Fork, Utah took place there. Many natives and Mormon settlers were slaughtered. Not to mention it's known for Bigfoot sightings and other weird shape-shifting shit. The canyon is full of spirits and activity. You're bound to at least experience something. Even if you just get a mild sort of sense of being watched or just the quote-unquote creeps. I've hiked up there many times before. I even knew it was haunted, just because it's one of the most beautiful canyons in Utah County. Every time I went, I would feel very paranoid once I got deep into the canyon, though. One of these times, I was with 2 friends and their 2 dogs. We had made it pretty far, and I'd been hiking for hours at this point. The sun was setting. We decided to take a water break. As soon as we stopped, we heard loud whooshing and banging noises coming from the left of the trail of trees. My friend's dogs immediately bolted down the trail with the hair standing up on their backs. The sound was not like anything we'd heard before. We thought it could be an animal, and maybe it was, but I don't know what kind of animal could make that noise. Can't describe it, but I still remember exactly how it sounded. Closest thing I can think of to the sound is a very large drum. I felt a strong urge to get the fuck out of there, and so did everyone else. Needless to say, we didn't finish the hike that day. After that experience, we did some research on the canyon and found out about the hauntings. This sort of triggered a curiosity to explore this, so I round up the gang of ghost hunters and we decided to go on a Friday. We decided to go at sunset, packed lots of ghost hunting gear, and set off preparing to hike in the dark. We have a ghost device that's always been accurate in our investigations, and we used this throughout this whole experience. It has an EMF detector and a radar. It's the most useful device, and if you got one, and it repeats words off the EVP, and it shows it spelled out into the screen. So as soon as we were 5 minutes up the trail, we all collectively agreed that we all felt more energy from the left side of the canyon. So we decided to take the left fork and we would just go to it. One of the first things the device said was 3. It repeated it many times throughout the hike. We assumed it was answering our question about how many spirits were there at first. The device detected many energy points on the radar as soon as the sun went down. Weird chains, humming, whistling, clanking noises throughout the whole hike. It always was coming from the left side of the canyon, and it seemed to be following us. We finally arrived in one mining cave in the trail, put the flashlight in the mouth of the cave, and noticed this particular cave is kind of sunk halfway into the ground, so you basically have to crawl into a hole that goes underground. It's a very tight squeeze and barely one person can go in at a time. One of our group members, Brian, decided he was going to try to look down for a second. We all had a very bad feeling about it, protested against it. And he insisted, and we just were going to go down for a second. Radar was going off, and it was showing a lot of strong activity coming from the cave's direction. Brian kneeled down and started to climb in. As soon as he got one leg in the hole of the cave, the device immediately said leg. We told Brian to stop and step away. He finally listened. We decided to stop and record an EVP session at the mouth of the cave. We were hearing the same distant voices and clanking, too, as we did before, but this time a bit louder. We set the voice recorder on the ground and started asking questions. We weren't getting much response, but the noises continued. We were huddled around the voice recorder when I heard whispering right behind my head. It felt like somebody was breathing down my neck. Everyone heard it and decided to end the recording. We all contemplated turning around and leaving, but Jenny and Brian insisted on going further. We decided, since we made it this far, we might as well keep going. We hadn't seen anyone else on the trail for hours. That's when we finally saw some BYU college students hiking back down as they passed us. As soon as they were approaching us, the activity on the radar and device disappeared instantly. It was almost like the spirits didn't want them to know that they were there. So we passed all these different bridges labeled with a number. Every bridge we passed, the activity and energy increased, as did the noises. One of my friends in our group, Jenny, has some psychic abilities, and she sees spirits ever since she flatlined in a hospital years ago. She had always been pretty good at sort of steering us in the right direction. She seems to know things before they happen. She mentioned to us that they were spirit guides with us protecting us the whole time, and was possibly warning us of something. I didn't think much of it at first, and then we passed bridge number 3. As soon as we did, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. It was a hot summer night and we were sweating the entire hike. And then we all were just putting on our jackets. And also was immediately a very bad, pungent, rotting smell and the sound of water, even though we were by a dry riverbed. We got to the part of the trail where the path narrows and it goes into a thick forested area. It was dark the whole trip, but we could see some without the flashlights because of the moon. But this area has thick trees blocking the moonlight. You could barely see 15 feet in front of you even with the flashlight. Everything inside me was telling me not to keep walking. My friend Kayla agreed. We stopped maybe a minute or two to talk, and everyone was huddled into a circle, except Jenny. She was looking in the distance up the riverbed. We were thinking about turning around because we began to all feel very unsafe and a sense of doom. As we were talking about leaving, the device said, "Go," and big. As soon as we heard that, we booked it down the trail. Heart felt like it was going to fall out of my chest. Running as fast as we could, and it felt like somebody was chasing us. Finally, after passing all the bridges, we finally slowed down just because we were out of breath. We all sighed a breath of relief. We felt safer as soon as we crossed the bridge once, or the bridge once again. We were all laughing about what happened, and we were making jokes to lighten the mood. Jenny then told us sternly to not let our guard down. She said we still have a way to go. She told Brian to shine a light behind us the rest of the way because we were being followed. We were hoping the light would push back whatever was there. We were walking back for maybe 10 minutes when suddenly, my friend Kayla began seizing and shaking. Her entire right side of her body was moving uncontrollably. She was using her left arm to try to stop her right arm from spasming. She was hyperventilating, and Jenny put her arm just around her, and we stopped her and let her calm down. We heard humming all around us. Eventually, she went back to normal. Still in complete shock, and we're walking as fast as we can down that trail. Then the device said protect, and the radar showed a circle around us forming all these dots of energy. It was super cool. We felt safe for a while. Then 30 minutes later, we started hearing louder noises. Jenny told us all to just ignore them and think of something positive. She told to picture a cute little bunny with brown eyes instead. We all joked about it. And then about 3 minutes later, something was rustling the bushes, and then out jumps a bunny with brown eyes in the center of the trail. As soon as it hit the ground, the device said intruder. I don't think about this coincidence until we reached the bottom. I do recall us thinking it was weird because it looked like a domesticated rabbit in the woods. Kayla was not doing well and was feeling sick and weak. Made it to the end of the trail and decided to do a protective ritual after the device said protect again. Before we turned off the device, we were talking about what could have attacked Kayla. That's when the device said monster. We ended our session and decided to take Kayla home and make sure she was safe. She was still very shaken up. I talked to Jenny the next day and asked her what she was looking at, and we were all huddled in a circle talking about the riverbed. She said that she was 4 spirits. 2 were benign, 1 was evil, and 1 was something that she never felt before. She saw something attack Kayla when she started seizing. She believes it was the last one. Jenny and Brian also brought up the weird connection to the bunny. Never thought about it that way. They believed it to be a shapeshifter and possibly the unexplainable entity that attacked Kayla. Kayla still had many problems afterwards. We eventually put a spell on her house to protect her, and the issues finally subsided. The reason why I'm retelling this story is because I finally watched the movie The Witch on Netflix after many people told me it was good. It's been more than a year since that experience, but when I watched that movie, there was a shape-shifting rabbit in it. It made me do a little bit more research on maybe what happened that night, and I came across many sources claiming this is a phenomenon that happens everywhere. Apparently, there's a shapeshifter known to take the form of a rabbit called Puka. Native Americans are aware of this kind of shapeshifter, and I believe it to be a connection to the underworld. Many believe that one of the other forms it takes is a beautiful young woman that walks through the woods. I promised to never speak of it again, but what the fuck happened? Prior to this incident, I've never experienced anything remotely paranormal, so this is one of the reasons why I never truly spoke of what I went through at the time. Being in denial was easier than me trying to understand something that I couldn't rationally grasp. It all started with me moving in with 2 other girls into a dormitory in the capital of my country. The dorm was exclusively for female students, and it had 3 major blocks. It's owned by the Ministry of Higher Education and is considered a public housing facility for people who do not want to or cannot afford to rent private apartments housing. We were given at random a room in the lowest block of the building, Block C. The room we were given was numbered 903. And it was the room before the last in order of rooms in the block. At the beginning, none of us were suspicious of anything, although we did notice the shape of a visible handprint in the front of the door. The handprint looked tiny, like that of a small child. We didn't give it much thought, and we concluded that it must have been maybe left from a previous paint coat on the door, and that was only the beginning of it all. As time went by and the school year rolled in, each of us started to notice little strange things happening around the room. It was small things like putting stuff in a certain place and finding it somewhere else. For so long, we kept thinking that we were just being forgetful and we're not paying as much attention as we should. Maybe it's due to school stress, exams, and such. However, that changed for me when I started to experience things differently. The first true incident that made me start to question everything was when I was in the shower. This room had a tiny shower, a small toilet, and a kitchen sink attached to it. Between the main and bigger part of the room, the beds and the desk and the shower, was the door. The door has a latch on it that you can turn left or right to lock and unlock. I was by myself that day, and both my roommates were out. It was close to mid-afternoon. I came back from college and wanted to take a shower before taking a nap, gathered towels and shampoo, and made sure to close the windows. Then I went into the shower, leaving the door unlocked and wide open. I was alone, so I didn't feel the need to lock or close the shower's door. I started up the shower's head and started opening the shampoo bottle when suddenly, and out of nowhere, the door to the shower shut so violently that the whole room actually shook. I heard the moment the latch on the door as if it turned right to lock me in. I was so startled that I almost hit my head on the floor of the shower. I shouted out because I thought I was maybe having one of my roommates coming home early and not realizing I was in there. Kept calling for the girls and telling them to unlock the door and that it was not funny. The door wouldn't budge, and the lock remained firmly on. At some point, I started to get seriously uneasy. That's because if nobody was going to open up the lock from the other side, I essentially was trapped in the shower. I kept banging on the door until my neighbor in the next room heard me. Came around to talk me through the wall. She came around and talked to me through the wall of her shower. The shower and toilets were built in a way that they aligned with those of the adjacent rooms. She asked me if I was all right, and I told her I was not, and that I was locked in and I needed to get out. So she called the head of the dorm. They brought a spare key to open up my room and unlock the shower's door so I could be let out. I was literally shaking, and the dorm's head just kept asking if I needed medical care. They gently laid me on my bed, and within that sort of commotion, it occurred to me that the room was empty. None of my roommates were there. I was so traumatized that I didn't even want to entertain the thought of what actually happened. I've always been terrified of small places, and I being forcefully locked into one almost caused me to lose consciousness. When the girls came after sunset, they were so concerned for me, and they swore up and down that they haven't returned to dorms until that very moment. As I calmed down, I started to go back into my mind, checking over things like the facts of the front door to the room being locked. I actually closed the windows as well before getting into the shower to not get a cold. I was losing my mind, going back and forth of what happened like thousands of times in my head, and I heard the door slam and I heard the lock turn. I did not imagine those things. Then how the fuck did I get locked in if no one else was on the other side of the door? It's after that when things started to get creepy and way too uncomfortable for me. After the whole thing, I sat down with my roommates and told them what I went through. Told them to tell me if I was going insane or if something's wrong with me. And at that moment, they opened up to me about weird stuff that they've also been experiencing. One of them spoke of how she was repeatedly feeling the sensation of a cold breath over her neck while she slept or napped. She told us that she was losing sleep because of it, but was scared to mention it really, and the other spoke of voices she would hear at random times and shadows dancing on the walls during both day and nighttime. We tried to rationalize what we were experiencing, but it just didn't reassure us in any way or form. Started staying out as long as we can just so that way we could spend time in the room as possible, or rather as little time as possible. I even stayed at a friend's apartment a couple of nights because I couldn't stomach sleeping in that room again. Things did not get any better, and in fact, it got worse after that. And this is me recalling the most terrifying night of my life. I promised to never speak of it again, but what the fuck happened? Prior to this incident, I've never experienced anything remotely paranormal, so this is one of the reasons why I never truly spoke of what I went through at the time. Being in denial was easier than me trying to understand something that I couldn't rationally grasp. It all started with me moving in with two other girls into a dormitory in the capital of my country. The dorm was exclusively for female students. and it had 3 major blocks. It's owned by the Ministry of Higher Education and is considered a public housing facility for people who do not want to or cannot afford to rent private apartments housing. We were given at random a room in the lowest block of the building, Block C. The room we were given was numbered 903, and it was the room before the last in order of rooms in the block. At the beginning, none of us were suspicious of anything, although we did notice the shape of a visible handprint in the front of the door. The handprint looked tiny, like that of a small child. We didn't give it much thought, and we concluded that it must have been maybe left from a previous paint coat on the door, and that was only the beginning of it all. As time went by and the school year rolled in, each of us started to notice little strange things happening around the room. It was small things like putting stuff in a certain place and finding it somewhere else. For so long we kept thinking that we were just being forgetful and were not paying as much attention as we should. Maybe it's due to school stress, exams and such. However, that changed for me when I started to experience things differently. The first true incident that made me start to question everything was when I was in the shower. This room had a tiny shower, a small toilet, and a kitchen sink attached to it. Between the main and bigger part of the room, the beds and the desk, and the shower, was the door. The door has a latch on it that you can turn left or right to lock and unlock. I was by myself that day, and both my roommates were out. It was close to mid-afternoon. I came back from college and wanted to take a shower before taking a nap, gathered towels and shampoo, and made sure to close the windows. Then I went into the shower, leaving the door unlocked and wide open. I was alone, so I didn't feel the need to lock or close the shower's door. I started up the shower's head and started opening the shampoo bottle when suddenly, and out of nowhere, the door to the shower shut so violently that the whole room actually shook. I heard the moment the latch on the door as if it turned right to lock me in. I was so startled that I almost hit my head on the floor of the shower. I shouted out because I thought I was maybe having one of my roommates coming home early and not realizing I was in there. Kept calling for the girls and telling them to unlock the door and that it was not funny. The door wouldn't budge, and the lock remained firmly on. At some point, I started to get seriously uneasy. That's because if nobody was going to open up the lock from the other side, I essentially was trapped in the shower. I kept banging on the door until my neighbor in the next room heard me. Came around to talk me through the wall. She came around and talked to me through the wall of her shower. The shower and toilets were built in a way that they aligned with those of the adjacent rooms. She asked me if I was all right, and I told her I was not, and that I was locked in and I needed to get out. So she called the head of the dorm, and they brought a spare key to open up my room and unlock the shower's door so I could be let out. I was literally shaking, and the dorm's head just kept asking if I needed medical care. They gently laid me on my bed, and within that sort of commotion, it occurred to me that the room was empty. None of my roommates were there. I was so traumatized that I didn't even want to entertain the thought of what actually happened. I've always been terrified of small places, and I being forcefully locked into one almost caused me to lose consciousness. When the girls came after sunset, they were so concerned for me, and they swore up and down that they haven't returned to dorms until that very moment. As I calmed down, I started to go back into my mind, checking over things like the facts of the front door to the room being locked. I actually closed the windows as well before getting into the shower and not get a cold. I was losing my mind, going back and forth of what happened like thousands of times in my head, and I heard the door slam and I heard the lock turn. I did not imagine those things. Then how the fuck did I get locked in if no one else was on the other side of the door? It's after that when things started to get creepy and way too uncomfortable for me. After the whole thing, I sat down with my roommates and told them what I went through. Told them to tell me if I was going insane or if something's wrong with me. And at that moment, they opened up to me about weird stuff that they've also been experiencing. One of them spoke of how she was repeatedly feeling the sensation of a cold breath over her neck while she slept or napped. She told told us that she was losing sleep because of it, but was scared to mention it really, and the other spoke of voices she would hear at random times and shadows dancing on the walls during both day and nighttime. We tried to rationalize what we were experiencing, but it just didn't reassure us in any way or form. Started staying out as long as we can, just so that way we could spend time in the room as possible, or rather as little time as possible. I even stayed at a friend's apartment a couple of nights because I couldn't stomach sleeping in that room again. Things did not get any better, and in fact, it got worse after that. And this is me recalling the most terrifying night of my life. So we're all asleep in the room when I suddenly woke up. I had no pressing need to pee, and I wasn't hungry or thirsty. I was just startled awake for no immediate reason. It was around 1 a.m. because I do remember checking my phone. Moonlight was strong, and it was a pretty bright night. I laid my head back into the pillow, eyes still open, trying to relax back to sleep, when I noticed something moving on the wall. At first, I thought it was a shadow of something in the room or in the balcony, but it was not. It was a shadow of a human child holding something in its hands. It kept moving back up and down the wall like it was running or playing around. I legitimately froze. I instantly tried to block my breathing. My heart was beating like crazy that I could hear it drumming like frantically in my ears. It was like I was my entire body, like made of wood. I swear I've never felt more scared or anxious in my life. Weirdest feeling ever, and no words can properly describe it. All I could think was, am I going crazy? There's no way I'm seeing what I'm seeing. Nope. I'm totally still asleep and I'm dreaming. Gonna wake up now soon. Just a dream, just a dream. The shadow stopped and suddenly turned in my direction. And in a perfect crystal clear voice, a giggling young girl spoke up to me saying, "Come play with me." I almost had a heart attack at that moment. I don't know how I did it, but I sprang up from the bed like a crazy person and started violently shaking my roommate awake. Told them that I'm not going to stay in this room for a moment longer, that I didn't care if I had to sleep in a mattress in the hallway outside. They were confused and they were worried and half awake, and I didn't care to linger. Just gathered my pillow and blanket and left. Went to a friend in another room in the building and spent the night with them. Next morning, skipped class, went to the dorm's head and told her to find me in an open spot in another room. Hopefully I didn't care about in what block and with whom, but that day I went into the cursed room, packed all my stuff, moved in with one of my roommates to a different room in the furthest block possible. The other roommate told me that she couldn't leave because there weren't enough empty spots for other rooms and that she's fine with staying. Told her to just knock herself out, but I'm never stepping a foot in that room ever again. And yes, I never went back there. The following year, I rented a house with the same roommate that left me with all the way at the end. The following year, I rented a house with the same roommate that left with me that day. We never spoke again of the shit that happened in that dorm room ever again. Never been in a dorm room. Ghosts or no ghosts, don't really want to go to a dorm room. Sweet dreams.